Picture a beautiful man. Picture him as a prince. And now, an action hero. Picture a man of God. A family man. Now an alleged Like a roadkill smeared over a busy sidewalk, it's difficult to look away from Hollywood spending hundreds of millions of dollars reimagining a man in so many lights, only for his career to be destroyed by a bunch of hot girls on Instagram. Still, when a celebrity faces cancellation, it's easy to become too fixated on his personal ruins to remember the well-oiled publicity machine that had long been able to package unhinged scumbags into movie stars. This video is dedicated to the studio executives, agents, publicists, and lawyers, whose years of hard work had gone into creating the unholy shit show that is Armie Hammer's cancellation. Thanks. We hate it here. The name Armie Hammer is short for Armand Hammer, after the original Hammer patriarch, one of modern history's most accomplished opportunists. Armand I had told people his parents chose his name from a Dumas novel, but it in fact referred to the Soviet symbol, paying homage to the Hammer's deep communist roots. Originally a family of doctors, Armand's father went to prison for a botched abortion that resulted in the death of a Russian diplomat's wife, although it's alleged that it was Armand who performed the operation. The disgraceful public downfall might have motivated Armand to inject some much-needed esteem back into his bloodline, as he would later purchase a stake in Armie Hammer, the ubiquitous household multi-tool that advertises his name to this day. However impressive that is, the Hammer's empire's true crown jewel is Occidental Petroleum, the company responsible yet not commonly associated with the Piper Alpha oil rig explosion, which claimed the astonishing loss of 167 lives. Occidental Petroleum was never held legally responsible, and to this day remains one of the largest independent oil producers in the world. Armand was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for his endeavors as a philanthropist and founded the Hammer Museum, one of the most prestigious art institutions in America. As the Sacklers would later prove with Guggenheim Museum and the opioid epidemic, being patrons of the fine arts seems to be a popular hobby amongst men who have defecated on humanity with corporate greed. After his death, Armand's fortunes would skip a generation past his son Julian, an acquitted murderer, to his grandson Michael Hammer, a boisterous, perpetually tan businessman. Michael married the devoutly religious fitness instructor Drew Mobley, and together they would steer the influence of the Hammer fortunes towards championing evangelicalism. They had 2 children before their divorce. Armie would be the better-looking one. It makes a lot of sense that Armie Hammer made his feature film debut as America's beloved homophobe Billy Graham. The film dotingly paints Graham as a handsome, salt-of-the-earth family man, which he was definitely not. But Armie would adopt this image and heavily advertise it throughout his career. He would marry early in a fairy tale wedding to Elizabeth Chambers, a lifestyle influencer and TV host with whom he shares 2 blonde children and the ownership of the popular Dallas-based bakery chain, Bird Bakery. To Armie's credit, although he understood the universal likability of being a hot, gainfully employed husband, he knew that the modern Hollywood leading man is more nuanced than a PG hunk. An actor is forever a few scandals or flops away from passing into obscurity, but true stardom could be leveraged into political power, dynastic prominence, royal titles, cultural iconography, and even mass worship. To achieve this, one must be both a relatable blank canvas for society's fantasies and cultural zeitgeist, and at the same time, the most interesting man on Earth. An actor belongs on the screen, which goes dim after the credits. A star shines on our collective psyche and fades into history and legends. This is a most thrilling game. Very few people will even get a seat at a table. Some people will lose everything. But Armie had been dealt all the right cards. Perhaps unsettled by his oppressive good looks and dynastic wealth, casting directors didn't really see Armie Hammer as a natural protagonist. He debuted as a jock in Arrested Development, became a slightly more nuanced jock on Veronica Mars, transitioned to selling drugs to suburban dads and desperate housewives, before finally graduating to swindling young heiresses and Gossip Girls. Armie wasn't groundbreaking like Leo in Who's Eating Gilbert Grape, or Joseph Gordon-Levitt in Mysterious Skin, but to his credit, Being a good sport and entertaining these silly, sinister caricatures of himself had high payoffs. His breakout role, The Social Network, would be directed by David Fincher. Many people were impressed by Armie's ability to play twins, but very few of them attributed the success to Fincher's brilliant use of CGI, perfected and advanced throughout his entire career. On top of that, Aaron Sorkin's highbrow dialogue made everyone seem eloquent and quick-witted. Regardless if Fincher and Sorkin knew they were typecasting, the Winklevoss twins shared all the defining attributes of Armie's background: entitled, deep-pocketed, emotionally dysfunctional, and aggressively litigious. So all it asked of Armie was not to take the narrative personally and in that way be authentically unreflective. This turns out to be a talent of his, and we'll see it shine through all of his most artistically accomplished works. But to go back and contextualize the tremendous benefits The Social Network had on Armie's career, it should be noted that its cast consisted entirely of child stars or children of stars. Jesse Eisenberg and Andrew Garfield would join superhero franchises and become Oscar nominees. Dakota Johnson managed to elevate her brand of sensuality from 50 Shades of Grey to European art house dramas. But back in 2010, when The Social Network released, it was Armie Hammer, freshly off his 3 TV cameos, who seemed to have leveraged his Fincher success into instant, wide-release stardom. He would star alongside Leonardo DiCaprio in J. Edgar, an overly serious political biography that tried very hard to humanize a man so evil that he would be a villain in Judas and the Black Messiah and Selma. But this was before Clint Eastwood's intellectual credibility was destroyed by him talking to a chair. With a tormented Leonardo DiCaprio in front and center, the film had all the trappings of your typical Oscar bait prestige drama. After J. Edgar, he would be cast as the handsome prince in Mirror Mirror, which cost Julia Roberts' salary plus at least another $80 million to make. Mirror Mirror was financed by Rat Pack Entertainment, led by Stephen Mnuchin, yep, the former Secretary of Treasury, and James Packer, Mariah Carey's ex-fiancé, who was accused of using actress Charlotte Kirk's sexual services to cement a financing deal with Sony. Rat Pack would also finance The Man from U.N.C.L.E., a failed franchise doomed by its upsettingly silly yet laborious name. In 2013, Armie would make his big protagonist debut in The Lone Ranger, alongside Johnny Depp. The film was such a big, problematic flop that Disney's president Alan Bergman came out and admitted that no amount of subsequent distribution, licensing, or merchandising could recoup the film's loss. And at this point, more investment and advertisement had gone into the making of Armie Hammer's career than the combined GDP of Tonga. None of his films created significant profits, cult followings, or mainstream fandoms, but the gatekeepers and studios that make movie stars already see him as one of their own. This would be confirmed when he spoofs himself in a cameo in Entourage, a show that constantly tries to parody Hollywood while simultaneously sucking its dick. This type of meta yet unreflective humor makes Hollywood seem like it can thoughtfully engage public perception, but bears not even an ounce of sincerity. And what even is the joke here? There was no real fandom to attest to Hammer's virtues and charm. Did anyone know if the real Armie Hammer was any better than the juvenile bully he pretends to be in Entourage? Still, in a sunny editorial spread in which he would skate in a blazer, he would reflect on his career and say he was done with the studio system, the very establishment that insisted he must flourish. Unlike Christina Ricci, Taylor Kitsch, and other hot actors who have been relegated to straight-to-video movies and TV cameos over smaller box office flops, Armie Hammer was ready to be an artist. And right away, celebrated auteur directors embraced his ambitions. In 2015, he played a wealthy, beautiful, yet emotionally aloof philanderer in Tom Ford's Nocturnal Animals. The role bears such an uncomfortable amount of similarities to his real life that it basically enacted parts of his affairs. But the film is beautiful and creates a postmodern portrayal of love and vitriol, perhaps most untarnished by the cleverly spare use of Mr. Hammer. He would lean into this further in Sorry to Bother You, where he plays a demonic corporate overlord who wants to use drugs to brainwash the working class into obedient slaves. It remains scientifically unclear how much self-awareness is needed to make Armie's role in this movie unironic, especially in the context of the Hammer's gruesome history of abusive business practices. Whatever the amount is, it's questionable that he has it. Being edgy would continue paying off until The Birth of the Nation, a film that ambitiously set out to reclaim its title from the original 1913 KKK fantasy film. It broke sales records at Sundance and was slated to be an Oscar contender, but it was then exposed that its director and writer were involved in a sexual assault trial so ugly that the victim committed suicide. Still, her two abusers' partnership endured past the tragedy to eventually achieve Hollywood recognition. Call it cancel culture, but from the consumer standpoint, it was bad vibes for a film to ask its audience to do this level of moral gymnastics before paying money for it. Still, he would go on to star in Free Fire with Brie Larson. Her anti-Casey Affleck beliefs must have resonated with Armie so much that he felt compelled to lament the double standards between Casey Affleck and Nate Parker, equating Affleck's accusations of sexual harassment to Parker's allegations of Casey is also a handsome, rich man from a famous family with deep industry ties. It's unlikely that the Affleck's guardians at WME, the same agency as Armie before he was dropped, would allow this kind of unceremonious white-on-white infighting to take place unmonetized. Soon, Armie apologized. In the following year, Call Me By Your Name would change everything. It did things no heterosexual studio movie could do. It gave Armie Hammer a real fandom and legitimized him as a thespian. Luca Guadagnino is a serious European director, and the film's sensibility is pure-hearted. Nonetheless, Sony Pictures embarked on an aggressive PR campaign lauding Armie Hammer and his co-star Timothée Chalamet's off-screen bromance. It was so successful that we would see them do this again with Tom Holland and Jake Gyllenhaal when promoting Spider-Man: Homecoming. Hammer's wife and professional chaperone, Elizabeth Chambers, was conveniently there to document all of their lovable interactions. Not everyone bought the queer baiting, though. BuzzFeed's Anne Helen Peterson launched a now famous article titled 10 Long Years of Trying to Make Armie Hammer Happen. In it, Peterson went through Armie's poor box office records, his clownish lack of self-awareness, and dared ask the question, is Hammer truly a unique star who's finally found his niche? Or simply a beautiful, pedigreed white man who's been allowed, in a way that few others in Hollywood have, endless attempts to discover it. Although Peterson's article would be vindicated post-mortem, it didn't truly expose Armie in a damaging enough way to prevent him from being cast in Sorry to Bother You, Hotel Mumbai, and On the Basis of Sex, all progressive social issue movies that made most of their money from liberal viewers. From there, he transitioned back into wide-release studio movies before they were shuttered by the pandemic. Death on the Niles, starring Gal Gadot, and Next Goal Wins, directed by Taika Waititi, are both blockbuster studio movies intended for holiday award season releases. So, hundreds of millions probably went into productions only for the profits to be prematurely tanked by Armie's alleged cannibalism. The people who had been able to reap the mild benefits of Armie's talent will now have to deal with severe damages to their finances and credibility. You see, Armie Hammer didn't deserve the career he had even before the allegations of cannibalism. And if Hollywood had been able to accept this when it was financially and creatively responsible, it wouldn't have shat its bed until it was bleeding millions. The gatekeepers of fame are known to take joy, dignity, and even life from people. But for Armie, they forgave and forgave until he was close to being considered a star, close to being considered an artist. So close that perhaps, after time and time of being told he'd be the next big thing, he believed it as well. It's actually not difficult to catch glimpses of Armie's disillusionment before his eventual meltdown. During the promotion of Call Me By Your Name, he witnessed what it was like for a world to be totally floored by someone's natural talent and charm. Maybe he understood that his agents couldn't negotiate that for him. His PR team couldn't set it up for him. The good Lord could make a white man tall, rich, and handsome, but he won't make Armie Hammer a beloved movie star. This might explain why he had watched the implosion of his career with such nihilistic ease. Although his unraveling may seem like a result of an episode of deep psychosis, it could also simply be the shredding of a staged persona that was never real. He'd never face destitution even if he squandered his image. But he also couldn't win the game of stardom even though it had been rigged in his favor. He could keep on hustling until he's a few facelifts deep, or he could stop pretending. As allegations against him multiplied and escalated, Armie would pick up the camera and give the world a raw, intimate view of his epic spiral, perhaps knowing that his downfall will be his life's best work.
Like noise complaints or something. I think they said it was 417. Oh, here it is. Okay. All right. I mean, it looks pretty much the same as my other. It's got like a little mirrored entryway, bathroom, you know, shower and tub. Well, that's cool. All right. This must be closet. Yeah. All right. So far, so good. Yeah, bed looks pretty comfy. That looks pretty good. Oh, this must be the balcony. Cool. Yeah, boy.